We're recording again. Mr. Pinedo, gracias for the second part of the interview. And what I want to focus on now, again, in relation to the Sembradores, the Aztlan Oral History Project that we started here in Houston, I'd like to talk to you about your experience that you had as the first generation of students who took Chicano Studies at the University of Texas in El Paso. Let's begin by the year. When did you start taking these classes?
I believe I started taking classes in 71.
71?
71, right.
Okay.
And you know, there was a really positive feeling about that because for the first time we were able to learn more about our culture, and so a lot of us jumped at the chance to take some of those classes. And although my major was math, I did take some Chicano courses, sociology courses. One that I took that I still remember was with Homero Galicia and Chicano Studies, and he as an assignment we had to write a report on a book, and I had the opportunity. He recommended The Colonizer and the Colonized by Albert Memmi, and that was a fundamental read for me because I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it talks about the colonization of any system and the dynamics of it. And it applies to any colonized situation, whether we're talking about Mexico that was colonized by the Españoles, European, or even us here in the United States, that some of us have a colonized mentality because we are treated as second-class citizens. There are a number of issues, so we identify as we don't identify as being equal, and that's something that the schools continue because because of the courses they have, the lack of Chicano studies that they have is that we don't learn to be proud of who we are, and that's one thing that those first classes that we had at the University of Texas was that all of a sudden we studied about our history. We knew who we are, where we came from, and so there was a feeling of brotherhood also that we had. I took like that class with Homero Galicia, and then with Dr. What is the kind of have a problem remembering something.
Ortega?
Dr. Ortega, thank you, Dr. Phil Ortega. He was a director of Chicano Studies, but he
The first director?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But he was also teaching. He would also teach some
Okay.
classes, and it was wonderful.
And that was probably a literature course, huh?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I also took a literature classes with Karina Ramirez.
Okay.
As one of her first Latino instructors in campus.
Whoa.
Yeah. And
You said Karina?
Karina Ramirez.
Okay.
Right. And there were a lot of changes that came on. They even brought, and see, this is where they played games on us. They even brought a president that had a Hispanic last name, but was not,
And who was that?
There was Dr. Natalicia. And matter of fact, I believe she's still the president of the university.
Of the UTEP?
Yes, I believe that she still is. But anyway, they brought her under the guise of Hispanic. They made a lot of changes. They brought in Chicano professors. They instituted the Chicano Studies. They also brought in advisors to financial aid advisors. And I'm to a large extent a product of that because the financial advisor that they had was very helpful in helping me to obtain grants and scholarships and even loans to continue on to college,
Mhm.
because possibly I couldn't have finished without that.
So when you think about the pedagogy that was used by these professors, these Chicano Studies professors such as Felipe Ortego,
Right.
Ortega?
Ortego.
Ortego.
Felipe Ortego, sí.
What do you think that they connected to the pedagogy, their way of teaching, that made you want to stay with the class?
Well, you know, just the depth of knowledge that they had. Also, they you know, firsthand, you know, it wasn't some theoretical thing. It was something that, you know, you could tell that they've
A
experienced.
lived experience, huh?
Lived it and you know, very acquainted, very knowledgeable.
Okay.
That only a person that comes from background can have.
Okay.
Okay.
So this was a very unique experience that you were undergoing. You were getting the first generation of Chicano professors there at the University of Texas in El Paso in the 70s. With regards to some of the textbooks that you remember using, do any of them come to mind?
You know, I don't recall any of the textbooks at this point, but you know, in the textbooks that were there, the professors were much more interesting than the textbooks.
Okay.
Because, you know, the textbooks that we had there were the textbooks that had been written up to that point. And in a lot of cases that they were not really adequate, but they used what they had.
Mm-hmm.
And later, people like Phil Ortego wrote books, and there's been other books by Chicano writers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, the textbooks were not a great thing.
I remember Dr. Felipe Ortego's writings, and one of them was Don Quixote on State Street. I don't know if you ever read that one.
No, I haven't read that one.
State Street is in El Paso, right? In El Segundo Barrio.
Really? I don't know. I mean, it could be.
Yeah, yeah. I remember reading his that book that he
okay.
wrote. So, if there were any major challenges with regards to that first generation of teaching Chicano Studies at UTEP, were there any that come to mind? Any major challenges that the courses came up to?
Yeah, I don't recall that there were any major challenges. Like I said, you know, the students, you know, took the courses, and they were really happy to do so, because before that we had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were not any challenges that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
There might have been, but not within the Chicano Studies itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And now, with regards to the feminist perspective in those courses that were taught at the Chicano Studies program there at UTEP, do you remember any feminist perspectives that came into the program? Professors, female professors of that nature that you can remember?
Well, I can remember Karina Ramirez. She was one of the professors,
Mm-hmm.
and but there wasn't you know, anything directed at feministas. Although the women were an integral part of the movement. I mean, they were all with us, like Lucy Lay, like Patricia Roybal Caballero, who is now a state director in New Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and Vivi Galicia, and others that were right with us, and got arrested, some of them even.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, at that point, you know, we were more focused on the Chicano,
Mm-hmm.
Chicano Studies and all that. And of course, La Mujer were very strong at that point. I mean, you know, they were Chicana women,
Mm-hmm.
and they were on par, equal to all of us, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly had input in everything.
Okay. Now, obviously the Chicano Studies program at UTEP had an influence outside of the university. What were some of those examples of the influence that Chicano Studies programs had out in the community outside of the university?
Well, there was I believe there was a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
from those Chicano studies. Because I think as a result of those Chicano studies, there were a lot of students, a lot of Chicano students that partook of those classes and that oriented them consequently to seek in fields of education where they could influence students. Others sought law degrees, and so that again they could influence the system. So I believe it had a ripple effect that over time it certainly influenced.
And you mentioned Homero Galicia, who was part of the Movimiento then, and is now still teaching there, is that correct?
He's still teaching. I believe I saw online that his name was still there on the roster.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's been there a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I'm correct in saying, Mr. Pinedo, the Chicano movement that you participated in at UTEP was not a for-profit venture, right? It was
No.
it was non-profit.
It was non-profit.
So within the non-profit world, where do you see that it made the strongest impact in the community, in the barrios?
Well, in other organizations, he had an input. It had an input on LULAC. LULAC was a little bit more conservative, and they kind of at first they kind of I think saw us as kind of as radicals, but then afterwards they came around to embracing that idea, and later I joined LULAC as well. I think at first there was some resistance from some of the established organizations because back then there was a feeling that you should immerse yourself in being American, speak English only, and there was a feeling by our fathers before us that if we embraced everything American and spoke only English, and that would get us ahead.
Didn't happen.
And that didn't happen because we see over time what those effects are. One of them was Ruben Valdez, who's an attorney now, and he was in the Movimiento. Well, his father raised him to speak nothing but English. He didn't know any Spanish. Any Spanish he learned subsequent to that. And he said, he said, if I had known Spanish, I would have been a much better attorney. He said, so now I've had to learn it, now that I'm older, make up for that.
Yep.
Because, his parents wouldn't want him to learn Spanish.
Yep.
Didn't want him even to associate with other Chicanos.
And of course, they were doing it for a survival reason, the parents, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The first parents that came, was, embrace all American, speak nothing but English, and you will be successful.
The assimilationist perspective.
Assimilation, exactly. But we see that's not really true over time. Over time, we see that the individual that really has been successful is the one that has embraced who he is, that is actually proud of who he is, and then goes out to be good at what he wants to be. And then, we're all Americans, we, a lot of them have served in the military and all that. But it's important that we know who we are, that we know where our roots lie, because only then can you really like yourself. And that's very important to your self-esteem.
Take us back for a moment, Mr. Pinedo, when you had this moment of exhilaration when you all succeeded at UTEP in getting the Chicano Studies program off the ground, or when you were taking a course and you had that moment of saying, Qingdao, we made it. And how did that feel? Do you remember that moment when you... Did you have such a moment?
Yeah, it was very exhilarating that that we finally achieved something that we have been fighting for. I mean, that's and it always motivates you to continue. Right when you feel that perhaps you're not getting anywhere, when you have a success, it motivates you to even more.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of us profited from that. Like I said, a lot of them went off to become attorneys, other educators and all that. I myself, going through that, in high school, I was a very introvert. I was into mathematics, and I got my degree in mathematics. But like I said, going through that, I became more socially oriented.
Yeah.
So in graduating from college, I got a position with doing social work,
Okay.
helping farm workers.
So in retrospect, what would you have done different with regards to your participation in the formation of Chicano Studies at UTEP, or with regards to some of the courses that you took? Would you have changed anything about that?
No, I wouldn't have changed anything. I think everything was right for the time that I did. Now I would have now in retrospect I would have instead graduated or gone on to law school, because like I said, I had changed. You know, the whole experience, it was very transformative. You know, I went in introvert, I went out extrovert and interested in issues and all that. I think I should have instead gone on to law school. But
Is there a law school in El Paso?
No, there was not, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, to end the interview, Mr. Pinedo, you're now the state director?
No, I'm...
District.
Yeah, LULAC District Director for District 18.
Okay.
Right.
So, I want to commend you for that accomplishment, and also ask you, how do you see the connection to your appointment as District Director of LULAC with the experience that you had with MECHA and those Mexican American Studies classes? Is there any connection that you make as far as organizational skills that you learned and so forth?
Yeah, it's very very helpful, of course, and in the sense that you know, we were able to learn to organize and to work with people to get them to back whatever project it is that you're on. And also it gives me a direction, because you know we still have a lot of people from way back that believe that if you immerse yourself totally in English, then that's better. That forget Spanish, you know, forget trying to be bilingual, you know, and you know, I respect their view, but they're from an older time. Okay, they're a generation removed from me, and some of them don't even like the word Chicano. You know, you probably ran into those.
Oh yeah.
And we've got some in the organization, you know, but it gives me, being in the organization, being director, gives me the opportunity to direct ways that I want to go, that I feel that the best thing for young people, to be proud of who they are. You know, we have a lot of things to be proud of. As Chicanos, we were here, you know, before any Anglos came. You know, we were the owners of the Southwest and 1/3 of the United States. And we have a lot of accomplishments going back to our fathers, the Aztecas, the Mayas, and all that. So we have a lot of things to be proud of, and that's what I want our young people to know and realize, and that's the direction I want to go.
Okay. Bueno, Mr. Pinedo, muchas gracias por la entrevista, and this was very privileged information that you gave our oral history project, and of course le deseamos la mejor salud para usted y su familia.
Gracias.
And you're now retired, correct?
Yeah, I'm retired.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm retired, and now I'm working for LULAC,
Okay.
you know.
Con ganas y canas.
Gratis.
Bueno, con permiso.
Okay, muchas gracias.
Con ganas y canas.